and how to lose, and how to choose.
Well, hello, this is Linda Carbonell, and welcome to another edition of Walking Through Life. Today I happen to have one of my favorite people. I don't know if he knows that, but he is. Senator Dick McCormack.
Well, you're one of my favorite people.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
We met many years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was on this show, and we were talking about education and addiction and all of that. And,
Yeah?
yeah.
Well, as the name of your show, Walking Through Life, indicates, you had started out, as I understood it, dealing with people whose lives had kind of gone badly and who were pulling it together and getting better. And it was all about hope and getting strong again. But you've broadened your focus. I mean, I've come on and talked about the whole range of government issues.
Yeah, because I figure that's important. That's important for people, and not many people get out to be able to talk to a lot of people to get educated about the different things that are happening in the Senate or in the state. So it's good to have people like yourself and others to come and explain things to us. So, and I just want to say thank you for being here again today.
I'm delighted. Thank you.
I'll try not
you
to
for
torture you too bad.
You've always been very nice to me.
So I think what we discussed that we were going to talk about is a little bit about what's happening in the state. But I think before that, you wanted to talk a little bit about the primary and the importance of voting in the primary.
Well, yeah, this is an election year, and in fact, we're electing a new president, and then all the way down to our local legislative races. We have the general election in November, but we also have primary elections where the respective parties choose their candidates. And the primary election is far more important than I think a lot of people realize. Yeah. I think people make the mistake, and it really is a mistake, of thinking of the primary as being like at a rock concert, the local band just starting out is the opening act, and then the stars come on. Or in a prize fight, you have the preliminary bouts, and then you have the featured fight. And I think people think of the primary as sort of the opening act, and the November election is the main event. But in fact, it's in the primary that the decision is made of who will get to run at all in the November election. I remember now Windsor County has 3 state senators. If you come in first, second, or third in the general election, you've been elected. And I remember once thinking, John Campbell always beats me in the general election. I get elected because I come in second. Yeah. And I thought, if this was a straight one-on-one race, I would have lost. Usually when you come in second, you lose. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. I always beat Campbell in the primary. Yeah. He wouldn't have been in the November election at all. Okay? It's like the primary chooses the candidates for the November election. And the problem is that very few people vote.
In the primary.
In the primary. And that means that the handful of people who do vote have tremendous leverage. And they may not be representative of the public will in general, or even of the will of the party. I suspect that most Republicans are horrified at Donald Trump being their nominee.
Oh, yeah.
He does not, he's just oozing bigotry, making fun of a judge because his parents were immigrants,
I know.
An American citizen, an American judge, and he's discrediting him because of his ethnicity. That's just one of many examples. I know a lot of Republicans. I may disagree with them on issues, but most of the vast majority of Republicans I know are good, decent people. And but what happens is most people don't vote in the primary. So the handful of Trump supporters who did vote, they ended up winning those primaries for him. Not that I'm facing anything that ugly in the Windsor County Senate Democratic primary. There are 4 of us seeking 3 spots, 3 nominations. All 4 of us are good people, and I would be proud to run with any of them. But there is the question of I'd like to see the primary be more representative of the will of the people. Where this all started from 100 years ago, the parties nominated their candidates in smoke-filled back rooms where party bosses decided who should run. And often the party bosses were actually sort of almost like puppet masters. The actual politicians took their orders from the smoke-filled back room. And the idea of the reformers of over 100 years ago, Theodore Roosevelt, William Jennings Bryan, Robert La Follette, the progressives, the populists, their view was take the nominating process away from the party bosses and give that power to the people.
The people aren't using it, yeah.
And the people aren't using that power.
I mean, and then you never know when the primary is going to be, or do you? I mean, it's not on the same date for everything, President.
Well, we've been changing it in Vermont. Right now, this year, the primary election is August 9th.
Okay.
And we have problems with primaries as it is, and I think we've made it worse. And it's the legislature that made it worse. August 9th, people go on vacation in August. If they're not on vacation, they're coming home from work and sitting on the deck with a gin and tonic. They're not particularly eager to go out and vote. People think of voting as an autumn activity. So we're likely to have a really poor turnout. We've already had the presidential primary. What we do have something in Vermont called early voting.
Yes.
And it's really important. In this case, early voting in the Democratic and Republican primaries for this year, early voting starts June 24th. So there's a good long stretch there. All you have to do is go to the town clerk. In the case of a big town like Hartford, go to the municipal building and ask for a ballot. And then you could fill it out right there, stick it in the envelope, and hand it to them, or you can take it home and you can mail it in.
I was going to say, because there's a lot of people with disabilities that can't get out to vote, that you can get an absentee ballot. You just have to call the town offices and request one.
Yeah. They'll get it to you.
Right.
And then they hold on to it until election day, until,
Yeah.
in this case, August 9th. And then it's counted. They check off the envelope, check off the voter list that you voted, but it's still a secret ballot. Your ballot then is still folded and goes into the ballot box. So it makes it easier. Vermont, all over the country, it seems that legislatures are trying to make it more difficult to vote. With the ID stuff, and the voter fraud has not been a problem. It really seems that there's an effort to just make it harder to vote. But in Vermont, we're trying to make it easier. And we have, automatic registration. You get your driver's license, you're registered to vote. And similarly, the early voting, that you can vote at your convenience.
Right. And that's one of the things when I've gone to vote here in Hartford, I've noticed is that people will only wait so long. They don't want to wait for hours and hours and hours to vote. They just want to get it done and get it over with. And so this seems like a good solution for them people. They can go in any time that they want. There's not a line. There's not this. There's not that. And I really want to get the message out there for people with disabilities is that you can have the ballot sent to you to your home and fill it out in your own leisure, and then send it back.
For people who think the lines are first of all, the lines are outrageously long in other parts of the country. That has not been the case in Vermont. I think we have adequate polling booths and adequate staffing. But there are times, if you go in particular, in the morning or the evening, that it might be a line for a while. It's tempting to get on a patriotic high horse and say, people have bled and died for you to have the right to vote. A few minutes online isn't too much to ask. But in fact, you don't have to spend that time online.
Right.
You can do it at your convenience. I have a couple of reasons for stressing this. One is simply, I think, as a matter of good citizenship. Most people should vote, and that includes voting in the primary, because the primary is, as I say, it's the cut. It's not the preliminary round. It's the elimination round, and it's really
Right.
important. But the other thing is, for me personally, as a politician, uh, I am not overly concerned about losing this primary. The people of Windsor County and I have a very good relationship.
Yeah.
And
I
the
always see you out
Democrats
there
of
going like
Windsor
this.
County. Yeah. I love being their state senator. I don't know if they love having me as their senator, but they certainly find it acceptable. I've been renominated by the Windsor Democrats and reelected repeatedly. And I'm pretty happy with that, and I'm confident. But there is always the outside possibility that I could find myself in trouble because of what we were talking about a few minutes ago, the quirkiness
Yeah.
of a primary because so few people vote. If my people don't get out and vote, and then other people's voters do, because the primary really is a contest of who has the best organizing skills. Not necessarily who's the most popular, but who has the best ability to get their people out. If I fall short on that, my people, which I really believe are a majority, could wake up the day after the primary quite surprised. You know, McCormack lost.
Yeah.
I love Dick. How did he lose?
I know, exactly.
Yeah.
There's so many people. I mean, you just inspire so many people. You really do.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I expect to come in first in the primary, and I expect to be reelected. But boy, it's arrogant to assume that.
Yeah.
You know, even years when we've run.
But you never have. You always told me
That's right.
you never, ever count on it. And I got to tell you, Dick, one of my favorite things about you is that election day or however it is, you're down right on the corner of where Corner Drug is and the bridge is, and I see you there waving to everybody.
The day after the election.
Oh, is that when it is? The day after?
With a thank you sign.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very, very gratifying to be elected to office. It actually is emotionally moving, and I like to get out and thank people, and even years when there was no opposition at all. My sense is, if you want people to vote for you, you owe them the courtesy of asking. Yeah. It's really arrogant to take it for granted. And again, I'm not scrambling here. I'm not afraid that I'm going to lose. I think I'm going to do fine. But you shouldn't take it for granted. And even if some people don't vote for me in the primary, by God, they ought to be voting in the primary. I mean,
Right.
I'd rather my opponents people vote for them in the primary than not vote.
Right.
Because it is the process by which we, the people, choose our government. And if we, the people, stay home, then it's, just a theory.
Yep.
So again, June 24th. And remind me to say that again at the end of the program, okay?
June
24th starts early voting.
Yep.
And primary day is August 9th. And if you're going to be in Maine on August 9th, vote
Early.
in my other life, I sometimes work the tourist trade as a musician, and people will often say to me, "Oh, Vermont is so lovely. Where could you possibly go for a vacation?" And I say, Vermonters go to Maine.
Yeah.
So
I go to the White Mountains when I go.
right.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be out of town on August 9th, which is the actual primary day, then vote absentee.
And now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that were passed in the Senate this year.
Yes. Well, let me talk a little bit about something that was passed a couple of years ago, but how it's working out. Because the most interesting thing I've been involved in for many years was the Death with Dignity or End of Life Choices bill, which it's now the law that if a person is at the end of life, we're not talking about someone choosing to die, but someone who would choose to live, but who is in fact dying and is near the end, within 6 months of the end, that a person has the option of getting a prescription that would hasten death medically. It's sometimes called physician-assisted suicide, and I think that's an unfortunate term because suicide implies choosing to die. And this is just a matter of, if you're dying, having some control over how it happens. it passed. There was a great deal of controversy. It passed with the Oregon safeguards, a collection of items in the law that it has to be verified that you're really at the end. It has to be verified that you're within your right mind, that no one is pressuring you. It has to be verified that you know you have other options and so on. What has happened since the passage of that law, it's very interesting, is that things have developed as predicted, which is number one, not a whole lot of people actually take medication that in fact hastens their death. They have the option. And the option is a comfort that in their last days, they don't live in dread of being stuck in an agonized body, of ending it badly. They know they have that option. Knowing they have that option, they then often go the full course. The other thing is, and this happened in Oregon, which is in Vermont, is that we're paying more attention to palliative care. We're paying more attention to, so it's a strange term, a good death. I mean, most of us would like to live forever, so there's no such thing as a good death. Right. But if you're going to die peacefully, to die without terrible pain, to die clean, to die with loved ones, is that we are paying more attention to a good death.
That's good.
And it is good. So I think, very often we will pass a law and then that's done. It's like, okay, we're done with that. And we're not done with it. Now this bill has become a law and you want to keep an eye on how things are actually going with it. So I just wanted to mention that because we had talked about it a few years ago.
Yep.
Okay, what in this last session, first of all, I went through some pretty demanding health issues. I had fallen down a flight of stairs, broke my arm severely, and then had complications and complications on the complications. I had 2 bone grafts, and the bones came from my hip. I had at one point an infection in the hip incision, as I say, a complication on the complication. Took antibiotics for that, which if you take a lot of antibiotics, they mess up your digestion. I had a problem with my eye. First of all, I'm happy to say that is all behind me. The arm is at about 95% flexibility. And I was getting ready emotionally to never play guitar again.
Oh, I'm so glad you can.
I'm playing guitar again.
Yeah.
And
you're a miracle, see?
Well, I don't know if I'm a miracle, but life goes on.
Yeah, but you went through it and you got through it.
And I want to say my colleagues were wonderful. The leadership, Senator Campbell as the president pro tempore of the Senate, and my committee chairs. In the Senate, you serve on 2 committees. In my case, Health and Welfare in the morning, and Appropriations, the Spending Committee, the Budget Committee in the afternoon. My committee chairs, Senator Ayer and Senator Kitchell, couldn't have been better. My colleagues, frankly, picked up a lot of my weight. They carried a lot of my weight this year. Nevertheless, I stayed in touch. I got off pain medications as quickly as possible. So at one point, after one of my surgeries, my wife's, we worry about the painkillers, the opioids. My wife said, "Dick, you're not having any drug cravings, are you?" And I said, "Yes, I am having a drug craving. Caffeine. I want coffee." And because I wanted to think. So I got thinking clearly as quickly as possible.
You're one of the lucky ones when it comes to that, though. A lot of people can't do that,
They get addicted.
Yeah. Exactly. They get addicted, and it's just a big mess and a loss, and that's when you turn to anything in any way to get your fix.
I had, I had the lucky thing that I actually do not enjoy narcotics. I've had them for pain relief from surgery. And I did not find it a pleasant or euphoric high. I found it sort of depressing.
Yeah.
And actually exactly what I needed maybe the first day or 2 after surgery, to just lie in the chaise lounge, look up at the trees and space out. But after 2 days, I just got really bored with that, and I wanted to think clearly. But let me talk about this. We have an opioid epidemic in our state.
Yes, we do.
I think the governor may have been a little unfair to the medical profession when he said they were handing out OxyContin like candy.
Exactly.
I don't know. It wasn't quite that irresponsible.
No.
But we have a tendency I don't know, is it a tendency in America? I think it may be just a tendency of human beings to think in pendulum swings. And we often go too far one way, and when we realize we've gone too far, we then go too far in the other direction. 20 years ago, there was a view that we were too restrictive about painkillers, about narcotics. I guess 20 years ago, they were probably still often using morphine.
Yeah.
And the view was we have gone too far in being responsible with morphine, and we're not doing a good enough job of easing pain. And there were people who sued their doctors for having left them in pain.
Yep.
And patients, it's 50 years ago, when my father was dying of cancer, he resisted pain medication. It was just a kind of a Yankee stoicism, and real men don't yield to pain. Also, I think he was worried about becoming a drug addict. And, even as a kid, I remember thinking, you're dying. Don't worry about becoming addicted. But people had that view. And the view was we've gone too far worrying about the dangers of the drugs. We've got to do a better job of curing the pain.
Yeah.
And probably the pendulum went too far the other way. Where, again, I don't think it's true that they were handing out OxyContin like it was candy. But people were getting too much OxyContin. I can tell you, I know that I have a lot left over.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Well,
I've
you know
already
what's
gotten
the
rid
cure
of.
for that, though, is to take it right down to your
Take it
police
right down.
department.
That's what I did.
I mean, I remember doing this once, and I couldn't get to the police department. I called them up. I said, hey, can you come down and get a medication that we used to take a long time ago that we still have here that we don't take anymore? Came right down, took it away.
Well, what we did, because I was on the Health and Welfare Committee, so I had the honor of being directly involved in the writing of one of the most important bills of the year, which is our opioid control bill. One of the big changes, and it's not a sudden profound change, it's been evolving this way for years, is we have recognized that drug pushers are criminals. Drug pushers are monsters. Drug addicts are not. Drug addicts are sick people.
Exactly.
Drug addicts are dealing with an illness called addiction. And then you get into a gray area, which is that there are addicts who sell to their friends as a means of supporting their addiction, which is that they're selling is monstrous, that they need to is a function of their addiction. And if they could get out of the addiction, they wouldn't be selling the drugs. But in any case, our approach in Vermont is to treat sellers of narcotics, including illicit painkillers, as the criminals they are, but to treat addicts as people in need of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the bill does is to try to expand treatment availability. The problem is that the people of Vermont have been pretty clear. They really have no taste for higher taxes. And without a lot of money, we are still facing, even after the passage of this bill, we're still facing a situation where people who do come to the realization of how sick they are, who have hit bottom and who have owned up and who want to get clean, they want to get straight, are put on a waiting list.
Yeah, absolutely. And
treatment.
somehow we've got to be able to fund recovery centers or and
Yes.
even the rehabs. And I mean, now they've got like recovery coaching and things like that that can really help people with addiction issues. But first of all, the people have got to come to realize that they're addicts.
Yeah. The problem right now is that there are people who do come to that realization, and they're still not getting the help they need. And but in
Does
terms
a lot of it have to do with medical insurance, you think? Insurance?
I think it's just we have not created enough facilities.
This is really recovery centers and rehabs.
I mean, we have the recovery, and we have this hub and spoke system, the main centers, and then, and hope we're at least trying to address the problem of an addict in Hartford having to take the bus down to, Massachusetts to get the, I'm blanking on what's the drug you take instead of heroin?
Oh, methadone.
Methadone. To get the methadone, they have, that basically it becomes your life, and we've got to make it easier to do that. There are also other medications that help with withdrawal that don't require, daily doses. You can take it for a longer stretch of time. Getting arrested does help bring a person to the realization.
Yes.
That he's in trouble. It's actually called the blue light phenomenon.
Yeah.
That's when a person who had no idea where they were headed when they first decided to try getting high on opioids suddenly finds, a high school friend of my granddaughter's is in jail for armed robbery, and she did it because she needed a fix. She was going through withdrawal. She called it dope sickness.
Yep.
And this is a girl who was a guest in my house, and she's in jail now. When the blue light is spinning, when you're under arrest, that's a very humiliating moment. And that's a good time to say to somebody, maybe you don't have to go to jail. Want to go to rehab? Does rehab look better to you than jail? Right. Now, there are people who say that's actually not going to work too well because the threat of jail means the person's being coerced into rehab. But you know what? You do what you can. And this is a good approach that when people get into trouble, we were talking earlier, I think before the program, that a lot of jail instances are actually mental health instances. And if we regard addiction as a mental health issue,
so it is, yes.
then this is that the person maybe doesn't need to be punished. The person needs to be go through rehab.
Yes.
One of the other things the bill does is we already have a registry to try to avoid doctor shopping. There are people who want the painkillers for illicit use, and so they'll go to one doctor with back pain, and then go to another doctor.
And go to the emergency rooms and so on and so on. And I think, haven't we done something so that everybody has to have a primary care, and that's the only place you can do? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's that, but emergency rooms, maybe, if it's on the weekend, they're not going to call your primary care. They're going to ask who he is, but
however, they do have, like you said, the registry where they've got your information of your doctor there. You can look at it right there and see.
The deal is that a doctor, before prescribing narcotics, has to go to the registry to see if you've been getting these similar medications from another doctor.
Right.
And if you have, then it appears that maybe you've been doctor shopping. Not necessarily doctor shop. For example, I had one surgeon for my arm, and another surgeon for my hip infection, and another surgeon for my eye problems, all of whom prescribed painkillers for me. So I would have been on that registry. I've never looked, but I imagine I'm on the registry with 3 different doctors. But you know what? That should be a red flag. And then that can be explained. But if nothing else, the doctor has to confront the patient with the fact, you're on this registry. What's going on here? Is your back pain your worst problem, or is it that you appear to be a drug addict? Maybe you don't even know it.
Yeah, right.
But now here's what my personal contribution to this bill, and it's something I'm very proud of. I've always said that politicians, legislators should rarely use the word I or me because we do nothing alone.
Yep.
Everything is, I mean, you need a majority of the committee to get a bill out of committee. Most bills have more than one sponsor. Then it comes to the full floor. I mean, any piece of legislation has dozens of people's fingerprints on it. But within that process, there are individual efforts. What I did on the Health and Welfare Committee is I advocated aggressively for the idea that yes, pain pills are abused. And yes, the abuse of pain medication is a problem. However, pain is also a problem.
That's right.
And pain medication that relieves pain is a good thing. It's a bad thing when it's abused.
Right.
We're taking steps to stop the abuse, but let us not forget that it's actually a good thing. I shocked the committee at one point. I said, thank God for narcotics.
Well,
And they go,
well,
whoa, but you know what? I've been
could,
in pain.
right.
And I've watched people in pain.
Right, because I mean, it just affects your whole being, your whole well-being, you know?
So
But
I
one of
worry
the-
about that so-called pendulum swing.
Yeah.
Is, okay, if the pendulum swung too far that way, let's not swing too far this way.
One of the
Okay.
things that I'm encouraged from Dartmouth and ABD, now this is New Hampshire, but whatever. If you're given a controlled drug, you're mandated to give a urine test at any time. That is effective. That is effective. That is one of those effective things that works. And I would love to see that happen in Vermont. I mean, just by...
Is that anyone who gets the prescription? Or
Yes.
are people who seem to have had a problem?
No, that's anybody. If you get prescribed that, you're under, it's kind of like a contract. You know what's, when you're prescribed it for pain, okay?
Yeah.
Dartmouth, ABD does this, okay? You get prescribed for a pain medication, long-term or whatever. You sign that contract saying that you agree to have a urine test at any time that the doctor wants you to or any other time.
Linda,
The
I'm going to
reason-
reserve judgment on that.
No, but the reason I'm saying I think it's a good thing is because then the doctor will be aware there's a problem, if there's a problem.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you either. I'm going to reserve judgment. I can see the advantage of that, but I also worry about treating people as though they're suspect, where all they've really done is be in
But they're
pain,
not
you know?
talking. They're not talking about just addicts, though. It's everybody.
Yeah, I know. And I'm wondering if
Everybody.
everybody should be treated that way. I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm not going
Well,
to argue with you or
in my
agree.
opinion, I believe that that's good. I believe it's a good thing because if there's a sign,
Yeah.
that can be seen, because not addicts like myself are not going to go to the doctor and say, okay, so I've decided I'm going to take 5 instead of 2, or
Yeah.
they're not going to forward with that,
Yeah. But I want to brag a little bit. What I got into the opioid bill is that the requirement that the doctor check the registry. They do that online. They do that with their desktop computer.
Yep.
And at the risk of sounding like a technophobe and a curmudgeon, I think we all know that often computers don't work. It's not unusual
Yep.
that you're hitting the cursor over and over because it's not doing what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And certainly with with Health Connect, which was just a nightmare.
Yeah, I know. That got pushed forward just too
So,
quick, and look what happened.
What I don't want to see is someone in terrible pain not getting the pain medication because the doctor's computer is not working. So it's
But
in
if
the
you
law.
give credit to the doctor, though, the doctor would be able to know that.
Well, it's in the law, but you don't want to make a criminal out of the doctor either for
No, exactly.
doing the humane.
Right.
So the doctor, it's in the law that if the doctor's having problems with the computer,
Oh,
he
good,
can
good.
just write the prescription.
Good.
And it may be that somewhere, sometime, some addict will slip through the cracks. That to me is the lesser of evils than to having someone be in terrible pain
Right.
because the computer doesn't work.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That was my personal. Otherwise, I was a member of the committee and voted with the majority. And in my other life, in the afternoon, I'm on the appropriations committee. That's the spending committee.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
what was hard this year is that the people have been pretty clear they do not favor higher taxes. And I don't think it's just being stingy. I think there are people who really are, on the margin. And I think perhaps our tax structure is not as progressive as it should be. In other words, if the very, very, very rich paid more in taxes, and I'm not saying punish the rich, I'm saying we all pay
Fair
our
enough.
share, and the better off you're doing, the larger should be
Right.
your share. That perhaps we could have greater revenues without punishing the middle class. But there are limits on how much we can raise in revenues. And that means we've had to be pretty disciplined in what we spend. And it was not fun passing this year's budget because I think a lot has been underfunded. I was able to get money for things that I have particular concerns with. I love the parent-child centers because we have a lot of families that are stressed, and to give those families as much support as we can. And we talk about children having children, and what happens is those children who the children had then grow up and they become parents, and there's not a lot of modeling of what good parenting looks like. But what we do know is that they love their kids, and they would do it right if someone would help them. And the parent-child centers do great work that way. Not just with dysfunctional families, but just with families whose only real problem is they don't have enough money, and helping them find ways to have things be more stable for their kids. I think the parent-child centers are important. That was a struggle to get funding for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the weatherization program is a good program, which is, we have fuel assistance to help with heating.
Which isn't much.
No, which isn't much, but no one should be cold. But the other thing is, while we're putting money to buy fuel so we can heat houses and have that heat go crashing out the window, it's a better use of the money to seal the house up so you can keep the heat in the house. It also makes people more comfortable.
Okay, because you're taking people with disabilities or people on services. Why can't you put them in not making, I do this here because I get services, right?
Yeah.
This is why I do Walking Through Life. So many of us want to do things like this to help the community because we are given so much. Don't you think that could somehow be worked a way where if you did some volunteering or something for something or anything, if you could contribute something to be able to help the state out?
Well,
incentives.
Last year, this was nationwide. This wasn't Vermont specific. Last year set a record for the most charitable giving.
Yeah.
That there's ever been. And that broke the record that was set the previous year. So, and of course, and boy, Vermont is good that way with volunteer fire departments.
Yes.
And
but
food shells and
everybody has a purpose. You see what I mean? If they can use that purpose to say thank you to the taxpayers or thank you to the people that provide this to us, it may be that it might be a little good for both.
Yeah, although I would hate to have to rely on that.
No, I know.
I mean, that's ultimately we want to do it all.
Yeah, we do.
We want a more robust economy with more jobs that pay better, but we also need, it's not a particularly new idea. I mean, it's in the Bible that, that you take care of the poor among you. And I think a lot of people will have you believe that those big spending liberals just invented this notion. But in fact, any civilized people don't let people starve in their midst.
Right.
or shouldn't anyway.
Right, but oftentimes too, the people are proud and they don't say anything. But if they could just get over that and just say, hey, I had, as an example, when I was a teenager, when I was homeless there, I had no food at all. Went into a little grocery store and I stole the Suzy Q. And the manager of the store saw me and he came out and he goes, "You just stole that." And I said, "I'm so hungry." And he goes, "If you want that, I'll let you sweep off my front porch. And if you come every day, I will feed you. If you come every day and sweep that porch."
Ah,
Now, is that a lesson or what?
That was a good guy. That was a good guy.
Yes, but that's a lesson.
If
I
he
didn't
had
get a
just
record.
If he had just given you the food because he felt sorry for you, that would
That would not have been a lesson now, would it?
And if he had been hard on you for being a thief,
Yep.
that would have been rather unkind. And
It was
yeah,
the
he did
one and
right.
only time that I did steal. But I mean, I think crocodile tears and everything else. And it was just like anything, when somebody realizes that you really need help, if you're willing to put your part in, whatever small, whatever it is that you can do, volunteer or whatever, people are more like to help you. And I think the state of Vermont's a lot like that too, is that they want to help, they just don't know, as besides raising taxes, what else can we do?
Well, I mean, the government does not generate an income. Really, the only revenues the government has
Right.
are either taxes, fees, and somewhat from penalties, I guess, but mainly it's taxes and fees. I'm feeling time going by. I had said before we finished, I wanted to make sure to give another pitch
Yep.
to the
Well,
primary.
Oh, the primary, yes.
The primary.
Yes. But we
Okay.
did not cover the marijuana part yet either.
Oh, okay.
We were gonna
Okay.
cover
Yeah, well,
the-
let's do that.
First of all,
First, August 9th is the primary.
primary.
Early voting starts June 24th.
It's important.
Okay, on marijuana, what happened was, I think there was a general consensus that the prohibition on marijuana has not worked. Not a consensus. There are a lot of people disagreed with that proposition. But there was a majority in both houses that agreed that the prohibition on marijuana has not worked and that we ought to move away from that. And then you get decriminalization or legalization, that somehow we ought to ease up on marijuana. There was not a coherent majority that could agree on all the details. And the result is that the effort finally just bogged down of its own weight, and we did not pass a bill this year. But this is one of those things that really has grown legs, and it'll come back up next year. When you have a bill and it's voted down, it's very hard to raise the same issue the next year. But this bill was not voted down. It was that it had passed the Senate. Something had passed in the House, out of committee. It finally died in committee, and so that I forget that may have even made a conference committee, or else it died in one of the House committees. But the point is that the bill never fully went the full route, which means it'll come up again. My personal view is this: I'm not naive about marijuana. It's not addictive the way heroin is addictive, that the body chemistry changes such that you get sick without it. But it certainly is habit forming for some people.
Yes, it can be.
It becomes a way of life.
Yep.
It makes, in my view, it makes otherwise interesting people boring to be around. It makes musicians think they're better than they actually are. There's a lot, as a teacher, I've seen, it causes a kind of a lethargy. I used to say to my students years ago, I was at secondary level, private school, I said, if I wanted to be a cop, I'd be getting paid 3 times what I'm getting paid as a teacher. I'm not going to bust you, but if you come into my class stoned, I'm going to mark you absent because you're not really here. Mm-hmm. There's a lot wrong with pot. Yes. The question for me is a matter of proportion. I think the laws against marijuana do more harm than marijuana does. I think giving someone a criminal record for getting high is just ridiculous. And the amount of time and money and effort we put in to trying to stop marijuana. And I hate to sound too glib, but what I would say to my colleagues is, people, we're talking about pot. I mean, it's a ubiquitous drug. It's all around us. And people say, well, what about people driving? Well, what about it? We got people driving on pot now. The bills that were being considered kept that illegal. It's illegal to drive. Similarly, giving it to kids is illegal and would remain illegal. The question is, if an adult wants marijuana, should we put state tax-supported resources into busting that person? And my view is that it's just a disproportionate response.
Okay, now I can give you my opinion, right?
Okay.
Okay, where I'd like to start is alcoholism. Okay, alcoholism is very addictive, and it's one of the matter of fact, it is the number one in the country it's a killer of everybody.
It's a killer.
Yes, okay.
Directly and indirectly.
Right. Okay, and that is alcohol. And it's legal, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol is legal. Okay, so Colorado, I guess, has already got it legal. They're already finding things that are happening, like more car crashes and certain things like that, you know? So to say that marijuana isn't as bad as alcohol, which many people have told me that, is just not the case, because they got to do more research into it. Now, if you look at it, okay, both Ted and I, of course, you know, I'm an addict, right? Whenever I did that, I had mental health symptoms beyond where I had to be hospitalized. Ted and I both experienced that together. He has a mental illness, I have a mental illness. We're not the only ones with mental illness, okay? So legalizing it, I think, can put it in the hands of the wrong people. Then you're talking about the children, okay? Now, what marijuana does to a child's brain, okay, it slows down the motivation,
Yeah.
lethargic
So we
feelings.
agree it should be illegal for kids.
It should be illegal for, I think it should be illegal for anybody, myself. I still think it should be illegal because we got alcohol that's legal that shouldn't be legal. I believe it shouldn't be legal because people are dying from it, you know. And I don't believe that marijuana should be legal because you're asking for trouble. For one thing, there's going to be more car accidents. You know, people say, well, we're going to make a bunch of money. But actually, if you look at it from an addict's point of view, the state isn't going to make as much money as they think they are, because what's going to happen is the drug dealers are just going to turn around and they're going to sell it cheaper than what the state sells it, so they can continue to sell it, or they're going to make a better brand of a drug.
I could tell from the emails and phone calls and letters I got of people who oppose legalization that there's a widespread belief out there that the reason we're doing this is for tax revenues.
That's what everybody tells
I
me.
can tell you,
That's what everybody's been telling me.
The reference to tax revenues is always a kind of icing on the cake thing.
Yeah,
After someone is done giving all the arguments for legalization, they'll say, and you know, we probably will get some tax revenues as well.
Yes, and that's what I've heard.
It's a little extra. It's not the motive for doing it. The motive for doing it is, first of all, and I want to stress this again, marijuana is probably not a good thing. Just as high-calorie, fatty foods are not a good thing. Just as video games that people spend hours playing are not a good thing. Okay, there's a lot of stuff out there in
that is not a good thing that
are not good things.
Right, we tried to control with, you know, like the sugar and stuff like that. However,
it's a question of proportion.
Well, not only that, because you've got to look at what marijuana does to the brain. It does a lot worse things than caffeine, does a lot worse things than sugar and fatty foods. That is somebody's choice, just as smoking marijuana is. But if you give them the legal right to smoke marijuana, they're going to be driving with it, and you think that's just marijuana, there's going to be alcohol mixed in there. There is going to be so many deaths, so more people being addicted to things and needing rehabs in it. It's going to, I believe, this is what I believe, it's going to end up costing the state of Vermont a heck of a lot more money in the long run. That's what I think.
Well,
And only you're talking about people children that aren't no longer going to be motivated to get out there and, you know, go search for jobs or.
Well, you know, I think, Linda, you're analyzing this as though we now have a pot pot-free world. And
That's
the
what-
question, and I think you think that I'm saying we
No, no.
shouldn't be pot-free anymore. What we
You're
should
not the
do
only one.
is have everybody smoke marijuana and drive on marijuana and give it to their kids.
No.
What I'm saying is no one should drive on marijuana. You should be arrested if you drive on marijuana.
Yes.
No one should give marijuana to kids. You should be arrested if you give marijuana to
yeah.
kids. If some adults are going to smoke marijuana, who actually are already doing it, we should stop using the resources of the state to hassle them. And what you talked about the industry. One of the things I did not like about the Senate bill is that it kind of industrialized marijuana. It set it up as it would be, a corporate thing. And the one thing they left illegal was homegrown. And my view is that's probably the one thing we ought to legalize, is if the local guy up the road who's been sticking some pot plants into his corn patch wants to grow marijuana, why would we not let him? It's.
I don't know, but the feedback that I've been getting from people, I think anyway, the ones that I've gone against the favoritism of marijuana, their thing is, like you just said, they think the state of Vermont's going to make a lot of money out of legalizing it. And they also don't
The
think
legislature doesn't think that.
yeah, well, they also
Some
don't think
people
that
out there might.
marijuana is a dangerous drug.
Yeah.
They also don't realize how it affects people with mental illness or, an addict. They don't understand that. And I think I'm not bringing it to argue with you, but I kind of want to make a point to the audience that this is not a simple matter. It's not something that, it's just not that simple. And I'm really glad that you're telling me that it has not passed, because I'm really glad about that. And I just want to say that I think the Senate and the House and everybody else needs to do a bit more investigating on the subject. And they also need to look at Colorado's example.
Yeah.
And I know that you've had state troopers come in and talk about the effects. I know you've had medical doctors come and talk about the effects. So I'm encouraged that we do have advocates for that. And just so you know, I'm one of those. So
Yeah, but I would say that the medical testimony has been on both sides of the question. And law enforcement is more opposed than supportive of legalization.
Yes.
But not unanimous.
Right.
Okay, and the other thing I've made my argument for why I support legalization. I also, going back many years, young people, especially when I was teaching, young people would often ask me why I wasn't pushing for the legalization of marijuana more stridently. And my answer was, I've dedicated my career to the environment, to civil liberties, to economic justice. I have important work to do.
Yes, you do.
And your right to get a buzz on is somewhere around number 50 on my list of priorities.
Yeah.
If I were king of Vermont and it were up to me, I would have legalized pot 20 years ago.
Now, a lot of people say
but
that.
It's never been a priority for me, because it just does. And I'm a little often annoyed when people, I've been in office for a long time now, and people I've never heard from. I've raised their taxes and I didn't hear from them. I've passed regulations they didn't like and I never heard from them. I hear from them about legalizing marijuana. I'm thinking, this is your issue? This is what matters. So we'll talk about legalization of marijuana as long as you want to, Linda. It's not up to me to end it. But I got to say,
wanted to do was share
I really
it.
don't. Yeah,
I think we both said it.
I hate being put in the position of arguing
But wait a
hooray
minute.
for pot, because that's not what I'm saying.
Wait a minute, though, because I know that I can with you, because I know you understand it, and I know you love me, and I know all of that. And it's a chance for me to speak my side.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many people that agree that it should be, and it's just like a light bulb goes on in my head. It's like, I gotta make a difference.
No, I hear you. I am not arguing.
I feel comfortable doing that with.
I'm not arguing
No, you're not arguing, no,
What I'm saying,
no.
for me, it's a matter of proportion.
Right.
And I think the laws against marijuana do a lot of harm. And of course, marijuana does some harm to some people. But again, as fatty foods, there are people who eat themselves to death.
I
And you and
know.
I know that.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are certainly people who drink themselves to death.
Oh, yeah.
Or drink
that's
other
legal.
people. Their drinking kills other people as
Yeah.
they're behind the wheel of a car.
I think that's what my whole point was, that we already got alcohol that does this,
Yeah.
you know?
And it would remain illegal to drive while high on pot. There are those who have said alcohol makes you drive too fast. Marijuana makes you drive too slow.
I mean, this is what I don't get. I'm thinking about all the times that I had tried marijuana and what it's done to my brain. It's like paranoia, It's like all of a sudden I'll have hallucinations, or all of a sudden I'm confined to this. I'll make a plan to do something and won't follow through. So I know how my brain works on that. I know that. And that's where, my uncomfortable comes from, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's some people that are like that. But I just want to thank you for putting up with me for giving you my opinion. And that's something I got to say
It is
about
an opinion that's shared by many, many people.
Yes, but
you're not alone.
I got to thank you, and I got to tell you, you are the only one that I really feel comfortable about bringing thoughts that I'm not so much comfortable sharing with other people. And
Of course, you just did.
I know. Well, I did. Thank you, world. They listen to me. But I mean, truly, you are a really good friend. And
Thanks.
I'm really encouraged because you've always listened to me. Always listened to me. And you don't say, "Oh, I'm going to go and, fix this or fix that." That's not the idea. That's not what we're looking for. It's just to tell you the story, to have you listen. And you listen. You always have.
Well, thank you.
And I
Linda.
appreciate that.
Thank you. For part of it is I realize human beings, we are imperfect creatures, and human societies are imperfect.
Yep.
And so I don't ever fantasize that I've got all the answers perfectly. And even when there are the times where I will still disagree with someone, I'll realize they've moved me a couple of degrees.
Yeah.
That maybe I think I still think they're wrong. I still think I'm right.
Yeah.
But boy, she had a point there. And we learn by
This is
listening
how
to
we
other
learn to
people.
communicate.
Yeah.
But you are somebody that, I really, really feel comfortable sharing anything that I always have. I've called you at home. I've talked to you, and,
A
it's
very
just-
proud moment for me, Linda. You're just talking about how I listen. I just interrupted you. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say, my father passed away, and I'm not saying you're like my father or anything like that. I would think of you more kind of like a influence in my life, I guess.
Thank you.
An inspiration.
Thank you.
Somebody that really, you make a difference. And I want to be that too. So I'm trying to kind of say, not only thank you, but you inspire me.
When the time comes, I hope it's many years from now, come to my funeral and say nice things about me. All right? I'll write out.
No, that won't be. No.
No, I've reached the age where I'm going to so many funerals. And I think, what do I want them to say about me? Phil Scott,
he's a great
on
guy.
his
I like
last moments in the Senate, did a little farewell. And I'm supporting Matt Dunn for governor, since I'm just mentioned the likely Republican candidate.
I'm hoping to have him on the show next.
Oh, Matt Dunn is great. But Phil Scott did me a great compliment. I was his first committee chair, and he was just noting a few senators. And he said that I had always demonstrated respect for everyone who came before my committee, including people he knew I disagreed with. And I really appreciated hearing that.
Because you do have that, but you also are willing to let somebody speak and talk. And, I've never felt that comfortable. I've never felt as comfortable as I do with you, with, I'd say, anybody, really, that I know, because I can see, from the moment you said, and I told you I didn't have an education, and you said to me that you could, it sounded to me like you have a college education. It was like, wow, somebody believed that. I remember
My
that.
stepfather was drafted into World War II right out of high school. And when he came out, he went to work, and he never went to college. And when I would put on airs, and he worked for the New York Times, it was interesting, and could only go so far because he didn't have a college education. But he worked at the Times, and he worked with some pretty prestigious intellectuals who he was on a first name basis with. If I would put on airs, as young, recently educated people sometimes do, and I would act, and he would say to me, this is a guy, Irish Catholic from Queens, kind of tough guy, and he would say, "Listen, college boy, I've known plenty of PhDs who didn't have the good sense to come in out of the rain."
That's true.
And I think of Jim Crotty my stepfather. I think of him all the time that way. Yep.
Well, I wanted to make sure that you knew how important you are to me,
Well,
how
thank you,
important you are
Linda.
to Walking Through Life. And we appreciate when you come and you share, and it's not all about politics all the time.
No, and I'm interested. It's amazing to me how many people watch your show.
Yes.
Anytime I come on, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, because
Hey, I saw you on the show.
yeah, you're sharing. You're one of the politicians that are very approachable.
Yeah.
And I know that you're going to play some songs for us. And
Yeah.
I know that my darling teddy bear, my husband, wants to come and sit and listen to you play. Well, hello, everybody. This is Linda Carbonell, and welcome to another edition of Walking Through Life with my dear friend, Senator Dick McCormack. Hi.
Hi.
This time, we are going to get you to play some music for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that sounds exciting. I know Ted and I both are fans, so if you could play for us, and we'll even open up the camera so people can see a close-up of you and everything. Just let us know what you're singing.
Okay, well, this is a Scottish song called "Say Will We Yet," and "say" is just the Scots English dialect for "so." So it's "So will we yet." It's describing things we've been doing, and so will we yet. And I associate this with the new year, even though it's June, so we're 6 months away. This is a good New Year's song. Sit down here, my cronies, and gie us your cry. Let the wind take the cares of this night upon its back. For our hearts to despondency we never will submit. We've listened all to Providence and say will we yet, and say will we yet, and say will we yet. We've listened all to Providence and say will we yet. Then fill up a tankard or nappy brown ale. It will lighten our hearts and enliven the tale, and we'll all be the merrier the longer that we sit. For we drank the gipper, money is the time, and say will we yet, and say will we yet, and say will we yet. Oh, we drank the gipper, money is the time, and say will we yet. Here's a health to the farmer, and prosper his plow, rewarding his ardent toil all the year through. For it's seed time and harvest time we ever will get. For we've been provided for, and say will we yet. And say will we yet, and say will we yet. We've all been provided for, and say will we yet.
Wow, that was great. You do so well. And you know, I don't know if many people know that you've come to one of my fundraisers and did that for us. That was a fun day.
yeah.
Oh, wasn't there somebody out, Rick Palomino, I think it was, you and him sang?
Larry.
Larry, that's what his
Yeah.
name is, yeah.
Oh, and he is a great folk singer.
He's a storyteller, for
Yeah.
sure, yeah. We got a lot of good people like that in Vermont, but I was really encouraged that, you know, this is something that you do, and I think it's great. You're good influence for anybody that's, you know, thinking about getting into the music.
I made a living at this for many years.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, really, it's what I did for, well, probably about 30 years. And not only that, I did it in Vermont.
Yeah, I did it in Vermont, yeah, right.
I did it my way.
Yeah.
Then I decided
Did
doing it my way wasn't paying the bills anymore. So.
Do you have any originals that you wrote?
Oh, yeah.
Well, you had to
Lots
play
of
us
them.
original.
Okay, why don't I do one? I'll do, yeah, I'll do this. I remember Sunday dinners Mama cooked when Daddy read to us kids from the good book. Back in the good old days, the good old country life, black and white TV and Barney Fife. We always thought that things would stay the same till the summer of love, when things got strange. A tribe of hippies bought the old farm round the bend. They renamed the place the Cosmic Living Inn. They're just a bunch of left-wing commies, Daddy claimed. But everything changed the year the hippies came. They bought their land from the estate of Farmer Brown. He was the most right-wing fanatic in our town. And against the counterculture he had raved. Now at night you can hear him spinning in his grave. Mama looked at Daddy in great fright as I hung around that commune day and night, because swimming naked looked like fun to me. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll and being free. Pick it, boy. Daddy rose at dawn to milk the herd as I come trucking home looking absurd, with love beads and with patches on my ass, and like the cows a great fondness for grass. Daddy played a fiddle and mouth harp while Mama wailed a mountain tenor part. But old country songs are sure a lot more fun with tambourine, guitar, and conga drum. Pick it again, boy. My mama's good home cooking was a treat. Those brownies that she baked were dark and sweet. The hippies' brownies didn't taste as good, but they had effects that mamas never could. Hippie chicks thought country boys were cute. Their philosophy was, if it feels good, do it. They had no bras and such alluring charms. Ah, but Mama hated the hair beneath their arms. I dearly love the hippie commune down down the road. These summer loves have made my mind explode. I grew my hair and Mama was ashamed. Everything changed the year the hippies came. That's the last verse, but there is an epilogue. This story ended many long years ago. That old commune's gone where all good communes go. The last remaining hippie has no hair and just became town Republican chair. My .com is organic living in. We market goat cheese, me and my wife, Jen. We donate 10% to human rights. And we attend our 12-step program Thursday nights. But I still recall that summer of love when things got strange. Everything changed the year the hippies came.
That was a great song. I like that.
Thank you. Well, it's a part of Vermont history that hasn't been sung about a lot.
Yeah. So you used to play all over Vermont, huh?
Yeah.
Do you still?
A
Sometimes,
little,
yeah.
A little.
When you're not in the Senate.
Yeah, it's kind of a sad thing. If you start making your living at something you love, you sometimes end up loving it less.
Oh.
You know, it's to make a living, I had to take whatever gigs I got.
Yeah.
And so the audiences were not always connected to what I was doing. And I've always said that you have to be Beethoven to deserve to show hatred for your audience.
Yeah.
If you come out on stage sullen, not liking you. Miles Davis or Bob Dylan could do that, and that kind of was part of their mystique. But I think I just looked like a jerk, so eventually backed off. And,
I don't think you. I don't.
Well, when you come out not liking the audience, I mean, they're paying you. So now I only do it when I want to.
I'm walking through life.
Said what?
I'm walking through life.
Yeah.
Always. People ask me all the time.
Yeah. Well, let me give you one more, all right?
Okay.
I'll do another one of mine.
Yeah.
Okay?
You write some good stuff.
Well, thank you. I should have done this and then done the year the hippies came, so I'd finish up on a laugh. This is a little darker.
Well, that's okay.
Well, you should always leave them laughing, they say. But let me do this one. These mountains know more than they tell, and more than you or I ever will. There's magic hiding underneath the country windowsill, and there are voices in the hill. My name is Gary Bartley. I was born here in the mountains. I've worked all of my adult life at the mill. My people have been farming here for 7 generations. Now my brother Wayne is the only one who's farming still. The oldest tombstones in the graveyard stand over my forebears. There are hills and roads and creeks around that bear my family's name. But now, like exiles on our own land, we live haunted by the old ways, like the Indians who were driven out when first my people came. But these mountains know more than they tell, and more than you or I ever will. There's magic hiding underneath the country windowsill, and there are voices in the hill. The old ways were full of hardships, the winters were cold and lonely, but they knew where they belonged in a world they could understand. Then as the cities closed in on us, the one choice looked too easy: go broke from paying taxes or get rich from selling land. But these mountains know more than they tell, and more than you or I ever will. There's magic hiding underneath the country windowsill, and there are voices in the hill. Now my children will grow up like children of the city, living on the countryside, but strangers to the land. See how their pleasures come in packages of styrofoam and fiberglass, using as a mantelpiece wood tools once made by hand. And now the children of the city come here looking for the good life of a picture card New England of a long forgotten day. And me, I know the dream they're looking for. Believe me, no one loves it more than he who held it in his hands and watched it fade away. But these mountains know more than they tell, yes, and more than you or I ever will. And there's magic hiding underneath the country windowsill, and there are voices in the hills. My people have been farming here for 7 generations. Now my brother Wayne's the only one who's farming still, and there are voices in the hills.
That was great.
Thank you.
I am so glad that you put up with me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Linda. Thank
Oh,
you for
did
your
you
good
hear
work.
that?
Thank you for your good work for the community. Yes, thank you.
He says I gotta go to the bathroom, so he disappears.
What happens? We all
No,
do from time to
I
time.
know.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
No, you will come back, right?
Yes.
I didn't scare you away.
No.
You will come back.
And early voting starts June 24th, and
Which
primary day
means-
is August 9th.
Right, which means you can either go and pick one up to take home with you, take your time to vote. You can go by absentee vote. You call the town office and you tell them that you would like a absentee voting ballot, and they will send it to you, and you just send it back. So you can do it at your leisure. If you would rather be social and go out and do it, it's June 24th or August 9th.
It starts June 24th.
That's
and
when the voting, you can go and get
yeah,
ready.
the day you can. I kind of like going to the polls.
A
going
lot of
into a
people do,
booth,
yes.
And,
yeah.
and you do that on the 9th of August.
Right. So either way, you know, you can do it. And in just voting, a primary, general vote, all of that is just so important because it's our life and it's our voice. And we have a say in this. Just to use our voice, whatever we believe, whatever we want seen done, vote for it, vote for them, whoever. And remember, and you know, I just want to say one thing that we were discussing about addiction and all of that, that all of us addicts, one way or the other, we have got a beautiful life ahead of us if that's what we choose. We can do anything that we want, and we deserve a sober, wonderful life.
And that's why you're an inspiration.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And anybody can do this. So you will come back. I'm hoping one of these days you're going to bring your wife, because she had checked off. She might come on Facebook. And I said, oh, boy, you get to meet her. And you did bring her.
I don't know. She's not that much of a ham.
You don't think
Cindy really,
she could be?
I think people think that I'm arrogant and I'm pushing myself out in front. Cindy likes pushing other people out in front. She likes making other people's dreams come true. No, she really does. She's an organization girl.
Right.
Well, I'm here doing a television show, and she's at home, figuring out
What's
who we
next?
have to call next. So, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you. Walking through life, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Walking through this life of mine, well, it's teaching me so many things. like how to love and how to lose and how to choose.